Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
All right, I want to show you something, okay? We're going to go down memory lane. This is not that long ago. This is last November, okay? That's all this. It's not even, well, it's November 2017 is what it is. And LaDavid Johnson, who was in Africa with Staff Sergeant Brian Black, with you're gonna yell at me because I won't pronounce this right. Puyallup, Washington. Puyallup. Okay, from Washington State, and Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Johnson of Springboro, Ohio, and Staff Sergeant Dustin Wright of Lyons, Georgia. LaDavid Johnson. These four guys. Okay, 4 weeks after his funeral, remains of LaDavid Johnson were finally identified through DNA testing. And they were delivered to Maisha Johnson, who was very, very pregnant at the funeral. Remember, she kissed the coffin. I mean, she was a beautiful, beautiful girl. And her story was that the president had, called on the phone after this Gold Star family learned about his final moments on television and in the newspaper. The president of the United States did not call Maisha Johnson, and they learned about this on TV. Anyway, Maisha Johnson said that when the president finally did call, they were in the back of a limousine going to the funeral, and in the car was Miami Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. She's a Democrat from Miami. You remember her. She wears the cowboy hat. She's, right? And so Maisha Johnson put the president's phone call on speakerphone so that everyone in the limo could hear what the president was saying to her. And Maisha Johnson said she heard him stumbling and trying to remember LaDavid Johnson's name. And she said that's what hurt her the most. She said, because if my husband is out there fighting for our country and he risked his life for our country, why can't he remember his name? And that made me cry even more. Well, John Kelly attacked Frederica Wilson 8 ways to Sunday, saying that it was a setup. This didn't happen. Sarah Sanders said the president did not say that. The president said, I did not say that. And Frederica Wilson went on television and said, oh, yes, he did.
She was crying the whole time. And when she hung up the phone, she looked at me and said, he didn't even remember his name. That's the hurting part.
And so I think what's made some headlines is that the line that you recounted from the president saying that Sergeant Johnson knew what he was getting into when he signed up. What was the tone and the tenor from the president in those particular comments?
He was almost like joking. He said, well, I guess you knew something to the fact that he knew what he was getting into when he signed up. But I guess it hurts anyway. Just matter-of-factly, that this is what happens. Anyone who is signing up for military duty is signing up to die. And that's the way we interpreted it. And it was horrible. It was insensitive. It was absolutely crazy and unnecessary. I was livid.
Was that Sergeant Johnson's widow's read of the call also? Was she upset by it, or are you speaking for yourself?
She was in tears. She was in tears. And she said he didn't even remember his name.
Okay, we all remember that, right? So the president is then called out about this, didn't even remember his name thing, didn't call for weeks, that the family found out that their son, there were four staff sergeants that they were ambushed. The story starts, trickling out about the fact that they were not equipped properly for whatever. Why were they confronted by, terrorist fighters? They were supposed to be advisors. They were in Niger. They were in Tongo, Niger. And they were supposed to be advising the forces there, just training them. And then all of a sudden, they're called out to another mission, and they're wearing shorts. They don't have flak jacket. They have nothing. I mean, they're not prepared for combat. They weren't dressed for it. They weren't equipped for it. This whole mission was just such a mystery to everybody around. The people. And remember, Frederica Wilson knew LaDavid Johnson personally because she, as a congresswoman, had started this campaign to attract young African-American men, boys, to service. It was called the 5,000 Men of Excellence, right? And so she was, attracting, young men and boys from Miami to join the military and, go to school that way and train themselves that way and all that. All right. So Frederica Wilson says that the president finally calls after the family learns about the death on the television set. And President Trump says, no, that's not true. Maisha Johnson is a liar.
Didn't say what that congresswoman said. Didn't say it at all. She knows it. And she now is not saying it. I did not say what she said. And I'd like her to make the statement again because I did not say what she said. I had a very nice conversation with the woman, with the wife, who sounded like a lovely woman, did not say what the congresswoman said, and most people aren't too surprised to hear that.
What's the proof, Mr. President?
Let her make her statement again, and then you'll find out.
That you said this.
Okay, let her make her statement again, and then you'll find out.
And then you'll find out. And then you'll find out. Well, of course, she does make her statement again.
This is classic Kelly.
She does make her statement again. That's the wrong clip. But, of course, she says, it's true. And she said, the president said, couldn't remember LaDavid Johnson's name and said, quote, but, he must have known what he signed up for. And then he calls Frederica Wilson wacky. Wacky Frederica Wilson. He gives her a nickname. And then he sends John Kelly out to a press conference. And John Kelly decides to use his son's service as ballast for why this mission went wrong and started lying about Frederica Wilson.
So we go down, Jim Comey, get an absolutely brilliant memorial speech to those fallen men and to all of the men and women of the FBI who serve our country so well and law enforcement so well. There were family members there. Some of the children that were there were only 3 or 4 years old when their dads were killed on that street in Miami-Dade. 3 of the men that survived the fight were there and gave a rendition of how brave those men were and how they gave their lives. And a congresswoman stood up, and in the long tradition of empty barrels making the most noise, stood up there and all of that and talked about how she was instrumental in getting the funding for that building and how she took care of her constituents because she got the money, and she just called up President Obama, and on that phone call he gave the money, the $20 million to build the building. And she sat down, and we were stunned that she'd done it. Even for someone that is that empty a barrel, we were stunned.
Okay, you remember that? He decided, first of all, his praise for Jim Comey is just, wow, in retrospect, so beautiful. But he was talking about the dedication of an FBI building in Miami. Miami-Dade is the county, okay? So he decided to lie about Frederica Wilson, bragging at the dedication ceremony for that FBI building. And then the tape appeared from the Sun Sentinel, a local newspaper in Fort Lauderdale, that clearly showed that Frederica Wilson never did showboat, grandstand. She's no empty barrel. And she was not in Congress at all. She wasn't even a congresswoman when the funding for that FBI building was given by Congress. She wasn't even there. So the whole story about her showboating, being an empty barrel, saying she brought the money down there for her constituents, that she had called President Obama, that building was funded before Frederica Wilson was even elected to Congress. So it all turned out to be a lie. So Frederica Wilson went on television and she was very hurt. She was more hurt than anything else.
This is classic Kelly. He lied on me, and now he's lying every day on the news. And the sad part about it is this is a 4-star general, retired, who I suppose was an honorable man. And he wakes up every morning watching TV as he loses each one of those stars. Each one he has lost for lying. And he has gotten himself into a situation where the entire body of people surrounding him are willing to lie for the President of the United States. This is crazy.
It is.
Why would he put his wonderful career on the line for Donald Trump, who will throw anyone under the bus and is just bidding his time before he throws him under the bus? It's awful. It's awful.
So that's Frederica Wilson telling the truth. John Kelly, of course, lied about her. The videotape then comes out and proves that John Kelly did lie and that Frederica Wilson was telling the truth. And now she's asked if she wants an apology from John Kelly.
Would you like to have an apology from John Kelly?
You know, John Kelly is almost, I guess you could say he was a puppet of the president, and what he was trying to do was divert the attention away from the president onto me, and he basically just lied on me. And I don't appreciate people lying on me. And that's what he did. I've been in politics a long time, and most things don't bother me. You know, it just rolls off my back. I've been lied on before, but the character assassination that he went through to call me out of my name and empty barrel and all the work that I've done in this community, not only does he owe me an apology, but he owes an apology to the American people, because when he lied on me, he lied to them. Yep. And I don't think that's fair, and I think it's wrong. And yes, he does owe the American people an apology for lying on one of their congresswomen.
Okay, so Rudy Giuliani.
And Clinton and the Obama administration, for political reasons, lied about the purpose of the attacks, including Hillary Clinton lying directly to the families of the people who were killed right to their face.
All right. We now are starting to get some information about what happened to LaDavid Johnson. Of course, right now, the senators were in a closed-door briefing. They were told the results of the investigation into the ambush in Niger that killed these 4 U.S. soldiers. Tim Kaine came out of that meeting, and I got to tell you, he looked like a ghost. He looked like a ghost.
I was in a classified briefing yesterday. I will just say this, that I believe that the troops who were sadly killed in Niger in October of 2017 were engaged in a mission that they were not authorized by law to participate in.
Oh, Jesus.
And that they were not trained to participate in.
Oh, Jesus.
And that is a significant reason that they tragically lost their lives.
I don't understand. Help me understand. What does that mean, that they weren't legally allowed to be in, not trained for? What does that mean?
I will just say that the troops that were in Niger were there pursuant to a congressional authorization to engage in train and equip missions.
Right.
They were not on a train and equip mission.
Right.
So where is the accountability? Who made that call? Who has to be held responsible for who was put and why?
We are going to be grappling with that in the days ahead. I just received this briefing yesterday. It was in classified setting, and I'm a little bit constrained in terms of what I feel like I can say this morning. But I would say this: the committee members were somewhat shocked to learn what happened, and we're not going to let it drop.
All righty, here's General Dunford, saying, and this is so interesting because there's an article today in the Miami Herald, because this is a Miami boy, LaDavid Johnson. He is, and his widow still lives, Maisha Johnson, lives in Miami. And the military went down to Miami and they briefed the family. They briefed Maisha Johnson. Frederica Wilson said she is still traumatized from the briefing, meaning Maisha Johnson. And Frederica Wilson's voice was trembling when she was talking to the Miami Herald reporter this morning. She said they just kept saying that they were expecting more closure, but she's still traumatized from the briefing because they were unable to provide sufficient answers to their questions about why he was left behind after an ambush where 4 Americans were killed. Quote, everyone was expecting the briefing to clarify or let them know what happened to their loved ones who made the ultimate sacrifice, Wilson said. Quote, they expected more closure as to his remaining hours or days because he was missing for 2 days. And the military officials don't want to reveal any more. But here's what we do now know. LaDavid's regiment was not equipped for battle. LaDavid Johnson was not trained for combat. He was a mechanic. He was a little boy who grew up taking things apart and putting them back together. And he was not trained for active combat duty. He was not trained as an infantryman. He was not trained to invade. He was not trained to go hunt terrorists. Okay? And it looks like they changed his mission in the middle of a training mission and told these 4 guys who were wearing shorts, who were training Nigerian forces to go and capture and kill some ISIS fighters. And they were ambushed. Now, back then, General Dunford told Frederica Wilson, and this is so amazing to me. She said, this is the rest of the article. Frederica Wilson said she was at this briefing. She still supports this family because this boy was part of her 5,000 Role Models of Excellence project that mentors African-American kids from Miami-Dade. And she has stayed in close contact with this family from the time she knew LaDavid Johnson when he was just a teenager all the way through to now, right? So she attended this briefing and she said, quote, I was thinking that I'm going to see a video because I asked to see a video from the unmanned plane that flew to the scene of the firefight, because that's what General Dunford said. She said, I was thinking I'm going to see this video since this was near the end of the firefight. When I asked about the video, the debriefer making the report was visibly annoyed that I asked that. And the evening went on so late, I never saw the video, so I assumed I could see it when I went back to Washington. Frederica Wilson went back to Washington and asked about the video earlier this week, and she was told there is no video, even though General Dunford said in the news briefing when this all was going down that an unmanned aircraft with video capability was deployed to the ambush scene during this press conference last year.
So early on the morning of 3rd October, as I mentioned, U.S. forces accompanied that Nigerian unit on a reconnaissance mission to gather information. The assessment by our leaders on the ground at that time was that contact with the enemy was unlikely. Mid-morning on October 4th, the patrol began to take fire as they were returning to their operating base. Approximately 1 hour after taking fire, the team requested support. And within minutes, a remotely piloted aircraft arrived overhead. Within an hour, French Mirage jets arrived on station. And then later that afternoon, French attack helicopters arrived on station and a Nigerian quick reaction force arrived in the area where our troops were in contact with the enemy. During a firefight, 2 U.S. soldiers were wounded and evacuated by French air to Miami, and that was consistent with the casualty evacuation plan that was in place for this particular operation. 3 U.S. soldiers who were killed in action were evacuated on the evening of 4 October, and at that time, Sergeant LaDavid Johnson was still missing. On the evening of 6 October, Sergeant Johnson's body was found and subsequently evacuated. From the time the firefight was initiated until Sergeant Johnson's body was recovered, French, Nigerian, or U.S. forces remained in that area.
You caught the little part where he says, we sent a flight in there and they could see the firefight. Yeah, and now there is no video. Isn't that something? And it's just so interesting that Gina Haspel has this little habit of destroying videos too. I'm shocked. Everybody, destroys videos under Republican presidents. Nixon wanted to destroy tapes. These people destroy videos. And Frederica Wilson said so. Am I to assume the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Joseph Dunford also misled the American people at the press conference he had at the Pentagon on October 23rd, 2017? I don't think this is the end of this. I think this is just the beginning. Well, thank God for her. So you have 4-star Kelly lying about her. You got 4-star Dunford, Joint Chiefs, lying about. There's video. We had an unmanned aircraft that was surveying the entire firefight. Especially near the end. And now they won't let anybody see it.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Oh, yeah, here's your problem.
There are also a lot of questions about the phone call you received from President Trump. I know you were in a car to the airport. Tell us what happened next.
Me and my family was in the limo to receive my husband from, I think that was Dover we went to?
Dover.
And we was literally on the airport strip getting ready to get out. And he called Master Sergeant Neil's phone. I asked Master Sergeant Neil to put his phone on speaker so my aunt and uncle could hear as well. And he goes on to saying his statement as what he said was...
The president.
Yes, the president said that he knew what he signed up for, but it hurts anyways. And it made me cry because I was very angry at the tone of his voice and how he said it. Like he couldn't remember my husband's name. The only way he remembered my husband's name because he told me he had my husband report in front of him. And that's when he actually said LaDavid. I heard him stumbling on trying to remember my husband's name. And that what hurt me the most, because if my husband is out here fighting for our country and he risks his life for our country, why can't you remember his name? And that what made me upset and cry even more, because my husband was an awesome soldier. He did what it take other soldiers like 5 years to do in 3 years. So imagine if my husband was here now. It took my husband 3 years to make E5. It take other soldiers 5 to 6 years just to make an E5.
She's right.
So if he was here now, he would have been on his way to being an E6 or an E7. My husband had high hopes in the military career.
What did you say to the president?
I didn't say anything. I just listened.
But you were upset when you got off the phone.
Oh, very, very upset and hurt. Very. It made me cry even worse.
So she's your problem, She's your problem because Trump is your guy.
Didn't say what that congresswoman said. Didn't say it at all. She knows it, and she now is not saying it. I did not say what she said, and I'd like her to make the statement again, because I did not say what she said. I had a very nice conversation with the woman, with the wife, who sounded like a lovely woman, did not say what the congresswoman said, and most people aren't too surprised to hear that.
Oh, yeah. So Maisha Johnson, she's your problem. She's the one because she just wanted to know what happened. That's all she wanted to know. And she didn't want to have to read about it in the newspaper, and she didn't want to have to see it on a TV. She wanted the president to thank her for her and her husband's service, but the president couldn't remember his name. Well, the president says that what Frederica Wilson said, that Maisha Johnson also said that your husband knew what he was signing up for, and that, the only way that he knew LaDavid Johnson's name is somebody was in the car with the president holding up a sign that said LaDavid Johnson on it. And so, the president is telling the truth, and Maisha Johnson is the liar.
What have they told you about what happened in Africa?
I really don't know the answers to that one, neither, because when they came to my house, they just told me that it was a massive gunfire, and my husband, as of October 4th, was missing. They didn't know his whereabouts. They didn't know where he was or where to find him. And a couple of days later is when they told me that he went from missing to killed in action. I don't know how he got killed, where he got killed, or anything. I don't know that part. They never told me, and that's what I've been trying to find out since.
Okay. Apparently, the senators emerged from this closed-door briefing and said that was a very explosive briefing. I have deep questions on whether the military is following instructions and limitations that Congress has laid down about the mission of these troops in Africa. The troops were supposed to be on a train and equip mission. It raises questions about why everyone is hiding from us what they were doing there. The Senate Armed Services Committee received a briefing from General Thomas Waldhauser, commander of U.S. Africa Command, Major General Roger Cloutier, the lead investigator on the ambush, Robert Kareem, Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, and Owen West, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low-Intensity Conflict. And they won't tell them how in the world this train and equip mission, which was all they were allowed to be doing there, suddenly changed so that they then had to confront terrorists. We now know that the mission that they were redirected to do was a kill or capture a leader of ISIS, of an affiliate of ISIS, okay? And these soldiers were never trained for this. These soldiers never signed up for this. These soldiers were supposed to be training soldiers in Niger. And Senator Dan Sullivan, who's a Republican from Alaska, said, if we're putting our highest value trained soldiers on capture and kill missions, they should be individuals who threaten the country. Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican of North Carolina, said, clearly some things in terms of their concept of an operation, well, they made mistakes. And of course, the president lied to the face of the family via phone, didn't even bother to, go meet them, although Hillary Clinton did go to the airport hangar in Dover to greet the bodies of the 4 that were killed in Benghazi because they worked for the State Department. But remember, Giuliani
and Clinton and the Obama administration, for political reasons, lied about the purpose of the attacks, including Hillary Clinton lying directly to the families of the people who were killed right to their face.
Just thought I'd bring that up, just because, it's good sometimes to go back in time, especially when it has to do with somebody who made the ultimate sacrifice for the country. Why? Well, because we want to remember them, A, it's almost Memorial Day, and B, because we want to know who lies to the face of the families. Was it Maisha Johnson who lied to the face of, her family when she put this president of the United States on a speakerphone and misrepresented in front of Frederica Wilson? And it wasn't her phone, by the way. A master sergeant who is probably on, the detail that accompanies our fallen soldiers' bodies to the funeral. It was a master sergeant who received the phone call from the president, and Maisha Johnson said simply to the master sergeant, can you put him on speakerphone so my aunt, my uncle can hear? And, of course, Frederica Wilson was in the car because she's a friend of the family and a congresswoman. For all this, Maisha Johnson was called a liar by the president. He said, I had a very nice conversation with the woman, not the widow of our fallen soldier. No. John Kelly lied about Frederica Wilson. John Kelly lied about the purpose of the mission. General Dunford lied about the purpose of the mission. Also lied and said there was an unmanned vehicle that has videotape of the firefight that took their lives. And when Frederica Wilson said, "Can I see that videotape of that firefight?" the debriefer who was with the family said, "I'm very, said he was very annoyed. When you go back to Washington, you can go see it." She goes back to Washington, and now she's told that Dunford lied, that there is no video, and she can't see it because it doesn't exist. Isn't that something? Benghazi, everybody. And back then, we said this could be and should be Trump's Benghazi. But you got a Republican Congress. But I only do this to pay homage to LaDavid Johnson and the 3 other sergeants that fell. And to show you these lion sacks of crap lie to the face of the families of the fallen. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.